8-year-old Ethan Matthews lay in his hospital bed, his small frame dwarfed by the white sheets that had become his world for the past 6 months. The harsh fluorescent lights cast shadows under his eyes, but nothing could dim the spark that still lived there. On his bedside table sat a small framed photo of Donald Trump, positioned so it was the first thing he saw every morning. "Tell me the story again, Mom," Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible above the steady beep of the machines monitoring his fragile life. Sarah Matthews, his mother, felt her heart break a little more each time he asked. She pulled the worn chair closer to his bed and took his tiny hand in hers. "Well," she began, forcing a smile through her tears, "when you get better, we're going to write a letter to President Trump. And maybe, just maybe, he'll come visit you." Ethan's eyes lit up with a hope that defied his circumstances. The leukemia had ravaged his small body, but his spirit remained unbroken. The doctors had been honest, too honest, perhaps. Stage 4 leukemia in children was brutal. The treatments were aggressive, the side effects devastating. But Ethan had something most patients didn't, an unwavering belief that his hero would somehow save him. Every night, he fell asleep clutching that photograph, dreaming of the day he would meet the man who, in his 8-year-old mind, could fix anything. His father, Michael, stood in the doorway watching this daily ritual. The medical bills were crushing them, his job barely covering the basics, let alone the mounting hospital costs. But watching his son's face light up at the mention of Trump's name made every sacrifice worth it. If hope was all they had left, then hope would have to be enough. Dr. Rebecca Chen closed Ethan's medical file with a heavy sigh. 3 weeks had passed since his last treatment, and the results weren't what anyone hoped for. The cancer was aggressive, spreading faster than they could contain it. She had seen many cases like this, but something about Ethan's unwavering optimism made this one different. "Mrs. Matthews," Dr. Chen said gently, "we need to discuss Ethan's condition." Sarah's face went white. She knew that tone, had heard it from other doctors when hope began to fade. "The treatment isn't responding as we'd hoped. We have maybe 2 weeks, possibly 3 if we're lucky." Sarah collapsed into the chair. 2 weeks. Her baby had 2 weeks, and all he wanted was to meet Donald Trump. She looked through the glass window at Ethan, who was showing his photo to a nurse, explaining with animated gestures why Trump was the greatest man alive. That evening, desperation drove Sarah to do something she never thought she would. She sat at her laptop and typed, "Dear President Trump, my son Ethan is dying, and you are his hero. Could you please find it in your heart to visit him?" She attached a photo of Ethan holding his Trump picture and hit send to every official White House email she could find. Michael found her crying at the computer. "What are you doing?" he asked softly. "Praying for a miracle," she replied. They both knew the chances were impossible. Presidents didn't visit random sick children. But sometimes, when everything else fails, the impossible becomes the only thing left to believe in. 3 days passed with no response. Ethan grew weaker, but his spirit remained strong. "Mom, when President Trump comes, I want to give him this," he said, holding up a crayon drawing he'd made. It showed 2 stick figures, one small, one tall with yellow hair, holding hands under a rainbow. It was 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday when Sarah's phone rang. The caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. number she didn't recognize. Thinking it was another bill collector, she almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. "Mrs. Matthews? This is Jennifer Walsh from President Trump's office. We received your email about your son Ethan." Sarah's knees buckled. This couldn't be real. "President Trump would like to visit Ethan this afternoon. Can you keep this completely confidential until after the visit?" Sarah could barely speak. You mean he's really coming?" The voice on the other end was warm and understanding. "Yes, ma'am. The president was deeply moved by your letter and Ethan's photo. He'll arrive at 2 p.m. Please don't tell the hospital staff or media. This is a private visit. Racing to Ethan's room, Sarah tried to contain her excitement. How do you tell a dying 8-year-old that his impossible dream is about to come true? Ethan, sweetie, she said, her voice trembling. Someone very special is coming to see you today. Ethan looked up from his coloring book, his bald head gleaming under the hospital lights. Is it President Trump? He asked with the innocent directness only children possess. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. Ethan's reaction was pure joy, a smile so bright it seemed to light up the entire room. I need to get ready, Ethan exclaimed, suddenly energized. For the first time in weeks, color returned to his cheeks. He insisted on wearing his favorite Trump 2024 t-shirt, the one that had become loose on his shrinking frame. Sarah helped him sit up straighter, arranged his few remaining toys, and positioned the crayon drawing prominently on his bedside table. At exactly 2 p.m., the hospital corridor fell silent. Secret Service agents appeared first, their presence both intimidating and reassuring. Then, walking with purposeful strides, came Donald Trump himself. Trump paused at the doorway of room 237, taking in the sight of the small boy who had captured his attention from thousands of miles away. Ethan sat propped up in bed, his eyes wide with disbelief and wonder. For a moment, the most powerful man in the world seemed overwhelmed by the courage radiating from this tiny patient. Ethan? Trump said softly, his usual booming voice gentle and warm. I heard you wanted to meet me. Ethan nodded, unable to speak, tears of joy streaming down his thin cheeks. Trump approached the bed slowly, pulled up a chair, and sat down at eye level with the boy. You know what, Ethan? I've met kings and presidents, celebrities and billionaires, but I've never met anyone as brave as you. Trump's eyes glistened as he spoke. The photos Sarah had sent hadn't prepared him for the reality of this child's condition, or the strength that somehow still shone from his eyes. Ethan found his voice. Mr. President, I made this for you, he said, holding out the crayon drawing with shaking hands. Trump accepted it as if it were the most precious gift he'd ever received. This is beautiful, Ethan. Is this you and me? The boy nodded enthusiastically. We're friends under the rainbow, Ethan explained. Yes, we are friends, Trump replied, his voice thick with emotion. Best friends. He pulled out his phone and showed Ethan photos from the White House, telling stories that made the boy laugh, a sound that hadn't been heard in that room for weeks. For 30 minutes, the outside world ceased to exist. It was just two friends, sharing stories and dreams. Trump noticed Ethan's breathing becoming labored. Are you tired, buddy? Ethan shook his head stubbornly. I don't want you to leave, he whispered. I've waited so long to meet you. Trump's heart shattered. He looked at Sarah, who nodded through her tears, understanding the silent question in his eyes. Ethan, Trump said, taking the boy's small hand in both of his. I want to make you a promise. Are you listening? Ethan nodded, hanging on every word. I promise that you're going to get better. I promise that you're going to grow up strong and do amazing things. And I promise that we'll see each other again. The words seemed to infuse Ethan with new energy. Really? You promise? Trump squeezed his hand gently. I never make promises I can't keep, and I'm not starting now. He pulled out his phone again. I want you to have my direct number. When you're feeling scared or sad, you call me. Doesn't matter what time it is, okay? Ethan's eyes were brighter than they'd been in months. Can I really call the president? Trump smiled, the kind of genuine smile that comes from the heart. You can call your friend Donald. That's who I am to you, your friend Donald. Before leaving, Trump knelt beside the bed and whispered something in Ethan's ear, words meant only for him. Whatever he said made Ethan smile, so wide it seemed impossible for someone so sick. Then Trump stood, saluted the brave little boy, and walked toward the door. "Mr. President?" Ethan called out. Trump turned back. "Thank you for being my hero." Trump's composure finally broke. "No, Ethan. Thank you for being mine." As Trump left the hospital, he made several phone calls. The first was to Dr. Chin, arranging for Ethan to be transferred to the best pediatric cancer center in the country, all expenses covered. The second was to his own doctor, requesting the names of the world's leading leukemia specialists. The third call was the most important, to Ethan's phone, just to make sure it was working. That night, for the first time in months, Ethan slept peacefully. He dreamed not of illness or fear, but of growing up strong, just like his friend Donald had promised. News of Trump's hospital visit somehow remained secret, but its impact rippled through everyone involved. Dr. Chun, who had prepared herself to lose another young patient, noticed immediate changes in Ethan's condition. His appetite returned, his energy levels improved, and most remarkably, his latest blood work showed the first positive signs in months. "It's not medically explainable," Dr. Chin told Sarah during their morning consultation. "Sometimes the will to live can be more powerful than any treatment we have. Whatever happened during that visit, it's given Ethan something we couldn't hope." Trump, meanwhile, found himself changed by the encounter. That evening, at a campaign rally in Ohio, he deviated from his prepared remarks. "I met a real American hero today," he told the crowd. "An 8-year-old boy who's fighting a battle most grown men couldn't handle. He reminded me why we fight for this country, for kids like him who believe in miracles." Every evening at exactly 8 p.m., Trump called Ethan. Sometimes they talked for 5 minutes, sometimes for 20. They discussed everything from favorite foods to dreams for the future. Trump shared stories from his childhood, while Ethan talked about wanting to be president someday. "You know what, Ethan?" Trump said during one of their calls. "I think you'd make a better president than me. You've got something special. You never give up, no matter what." These conversations became the highlight of both their days. Sarah watched her son transform before her eyes. The boy who had been preparing to say goodbye was now making plans for his 9th birthday. He talked about going back to school, playing baseball, and visiting the White House when he got better, not if, but when. Michael, who had been preparing for the worst, found himself daring to hope again. He started planning family vacations they might take, began researching schools for when Ethan was healthy enough to return. The impossible was becoming possible, one day at a time. 6 weeks after Trump's visit, Dr. Chin stared at the test results in disbelief. She ran them twice, then called for a third opinion. The numbers didn't lie. Ethan's cancer markers had dropped dramatically. The tumors were shrinking at a rate that defied medical explanation. "Mrs. Matthews," Dr. Chin said, her voice filled with wonder, "I've been practicing medicine for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Ethan is in remission." Sarah collapsed into Michael's arms, both of them sobbing with relief and gratitude. When they told Ethan the news, his first words were, "I have to call Donald." Trump answered on the first ring, as he always did when Ethan called. "Guess what, Donald? The doctors say I'm getting better, just like you promised." Trump's voice broke with emotion. "I told you, buddy. I never make promises I can't keep." There was a pause, then Trump continued, "How would you like to come visit me at the White House? I think it's time for that tour we talked about." 3 months later, Ethan Matthews walked into the Oval Office, his hair beginning to grow back, his cheeks full of color, and his eyes bright with life. He wore a new suit, his first real suit, and carried the same crayon drawing that had started their friendship. "Mr. President," Ethan said formally, then broke into a grin. "I mean, Donald, I kept my promise too. I got better." Trump scooped him up in a bear hug, both of them laughing through their tears. As they sat in the Oval Office, Ethan looked around in wonder. "This is really where you work?" Trump nodded. "You know what, Ethan? Someday you might work here too. You've got what it takes. You never give up, you keep your promises, and you believe in miracles." Ethan smiled, the same bright smile that had lit up a hospital room months earlier. "I believe in friends," he said simply. "Friends who keep their promises." The story of Ethan and Trump's friendship became a reminder that sometimes the most powerful force in the world isn't politics or money. It's hope, delivered by someone who cares enough to show up when it matters most.